Keir Starmer wants to axe Rachel Reeves as Chancellor in a major shake-up of his top team to revive Labour's plunging popularity. In a shock move, the Prime Minister is considering moving Home Secretary Yvette Cooper to the Treasury to boost the country's economic fortunes. His reshuffle would see Starmer loyalist Pat McFadden, currently the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, shift to the Home Office as the government seeks to get a grip on the immigration crisis. Defence Secretary John Healey is also facing the bullet because of an ongoing defence spending row. The merry-go-round means Luke Pollard could replace Healey at the Mod with Labour newbie and former Royal Marine Alistair Cairns tipped for a defence role. Insiders say an active process is going on as Sir Keir considers how and when to execute a reshuffle, which is most likely to happen in the spring. A Whitehall source said, Keir needs to shake things up and there is an active process going on to consider all the options. They added, there is no doubt that the first 6 months have been pretty rough and the poll ratings show that something needs to change. The source said that former Foreign Secretary David Miliband could also be brought back into the fold, replacing Peter Mandelson as President of the Global Council. Mr. Miliband was understood to be on the shortlist to become the UK's new US ambassador in Washington, a role eventually given to Mr. Mandelson. Ms. Reeves has come under intense pressure since her Halloween budget horror show with her policies deeply unpopular and politically damaging. Her decision to scrap the winter fuel payment for pensioners has been met with a furious backlash, as has her move to clobber farmers and family businesses with a 20% inheritance tax raid. The Chancellor's national insurance hike to employers has also sparked fears of a surge in unemployment this year, with some economists warning the economy should be on recession watch. A further pinch point is due next month when the OBR, the government's spending watchdog, publishes its economic and fiscal forecast on March 26. If, as is expected, the news is grim, the Chancellor could be forced to squeeze departmental spending again, further infuriating cabinet colleagues. Labour's big pitch to voters has been its promise to drive economic growth. But a flatlining economy plus the government's failure to tackle the UK's immigration crisis has seen Labour and Sir Keir's popularity tumble. Earlier this week, Nigel Farage's Reform UK topped a landmark poll, coming ahead of Labour and the Tories for the first time ever. Reform now sits on 25%, with Labour second on 24% and the Tories in third on 21%, according to the Sky News/YouGov survey. The Conservatives are on 21%, with Lib Dems are on 14% and the Greens just narrowly below 10%. It is a dramatic slide in fortunes for Labour, which cruised to a landslide on July 4, with 35% of the electorate. Furthermore, Mr. Farage has a net favourability rating of -27, whereas Badenoch dropped to -29 this month. The Prime Minister is less popular than both his main rivals, with his net favourability rating now as low as -36. Labour has been contacted for a comment. Here is a summary of internet users' reactions. So headline pending then. Hypocrite sacks other hypocrite and replaces with different hypocrite. Sacking her will not repair the damage. He needs to do the one thing he does best and reverse her policies. He should start by back-paying the withheld winter fuel allowance. Then he should reverse each and every other policy impoverishing our pensioners, reverse the WASPI announcement, reverse the hike to employers' NI. Then he should apologise to the British people for the thoroughly poor management of the country since June 2024. Alternatively, we could just vote reform at all coming local and national elections and have it all done anyway, plus sort out our massive immigration problem once and for all. Vote reform or get Labour or the Conservatives in again. When Starmer mentioned reform in PMQs, he knows his government are in trouble. Up till now he has just dismissed reform. Reeves, given her P45, will be very dependent on growth, private finance investment, inflation and unemployment figures, all of which are due to be published in March. Interesting times ahead. An 11-year-old in secondary school would do a better job, as for the employer's national insurance tax, if they can't afford to put it back to where it was. Raise it to $7,500 at least, otherwise unemployment will rise, benefit payments will be millions more, so the tax gained will have a counter effect, with millions more inactive. Cooper has an education in economics, background as a researcher and 18 months as Sec to the Treasury. Does she qualify to run the whole UK economy? No. AMD, she's another Remainer. Godalpus, has Labour no qualified/experienced MPs. Especially also get Rai/Diava, EM and La Ami, Daredwaits dragging the party down. If Starmer does a reshuffle, let's hope he does it properly for the UK and us. You can't keep changing staff, as every time you do there is a learning curve for everyone in the department and work does not get done. The Tories treated it like a merry-go-round. Now Labour will do the same. They had 14 years to work out the best person for each position, and after just 7 months they got it badly wrong. Well, regarding this possible shuffle in the spring? By getting rid of Reeves, which I would months ago. At the end of the day, Mr. Starmer not sir, as he is no sir to me. Anyway, regarding Reeves, she can only bring in what she suggests with his authority, so truthfully he should also resign for giving her the authority to go ahead with these problems. But then he would not like him to blame himself, as it would show the people of this broken country the poorly he is as a PM. In place of receiving speech help during COVID, which he broke the law, he should have gone for how to control spending, taxpayers' money. Needs to have gone back to first 5-year class. To stop the decline in our economy, the entire Labour agenda needs to be reshaped. To restore the winter fuel allowance increase in the end, farmers' inheritance tax cuts need to be done in their handout. I hope they will send back illegal immigrants, reduce legal immigrants and only give them work permits in the first instance. Stop giving money to people who do not want to work for pathetic reasons. How on earth is a government consumed with Marxist ideology and a dislike of its country, people and history, going to compete with a party that possesses totally opposite values, which I suspect are shared by the vast majority of the country? They had the backing of just 19% of the electorate back in July. People just don't want the pain or shared poverty and decline of an anti-British Marxist Labour government. Cooper for Reeves as Chancellor, A. Wonder if she'll be coached by hubby Ed Balls, who worked under Chancellor Gordon Brown in the Blair government, who destroyed the private sector's pension schemes, taxed and spent his way through the late 90s/early noughties, thereby setting the UK well on its way to the £2.6 trillion debt we now owe. Set the regulation agenda for the finance industry late 90s/early noughties, which played no small part in the UK's financial meltdown in 2008. What a joke. So Starmer thinks by axing the likes of Reeves is going to make a difference? Absolutely no chance. The damage has been done. No amount of chopping and changing cabinet members will make a scrap of difference to the absolutely pathetic mess this Labour government have made, not only to the economy but literally everything they've done since becoming the government. There are millions of voters out there just waiting for the opportunity to vote against Labour, and many, like the majority of over 10 million pensioners, who always tend to vote in elections, simply can't wait, and many of them will be switching their vote to reform. I cannot remember a government that has performed as poorly as this Labour government, and I reckon that most people will be so glad to see the back of them. It's not really rocket science. If you raise the cost of employment, that gets passed on to the consumer, who in turn doesn't have the money to buy from the business, who either goes bust or raises prices. Either way, the taxpayer pays. Simple economics. Economics is something Labour doesn't seem to understand unless it lines their or their union paymasters' pockets. Before reform might be elected, they need some credible policies. Nigel was on R4 the other morning. He was clueless about how reform would trade with the EU. He still thinks we wouldn't have to follow EU law. Not trading with the EU is not a credible option. It would cause mass company closures and redundancies.